Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today on ideas for training our leaders. My name's Cliff and I'm on our North Point Partners team here. And I've got some guests with me that we'll introduce in just a minute. But again, just thank you so much for joining. We all know that our world has changed a ton over this last year. And I know that's an understatement for all of us. But along with those changes, it's changed the way that we need to help and equip our leaders as they start new groups. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. We don't claim at all to have figured this out or to have solved this puzzle, but we have tried some things that have not worked, and we've tried some things that have worked. And today, what we do is we'd love to share that with you in the hopes that you can just take some of that away, improve on it, and have a great experience training your leaders and equipping them well so that they have better experiences in their groups too. So we're going to get started here in just a second, but if you haven't already, jump in our chat, let us know where you're from and ask us questions along the way, and we'll try to pick up as many of those as we can. Already see people from all over the nation, as well as in Canada. I also saw someone from South Africa earlier today, so that was awesome. But we'll go ahead and get started, and I'm going to have our guests and really the stars of our show introduce themselves. So Lynn, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and let the audience know what you do and where you're from and how you help our churches?
Sure. Thanks, Cliff. Yes, my name is Lynn Litz, and I am a women's groups director out of our North Point campus.
And Bo, would you chime in as well for us?
Hey, everybody. My name is Bo Johnson. I lead our groups team at Buckhead Church, which is our in-town or one of our in-town campuses.
Yeah, great. Welcome. So we've got two different perspectives at two different churches that really serve somewhat different demographics. So we're hoping that'll help us as well here today also. So why don't we just dive right in? Why don't we start with just this idea of what trends have you guys been seeing that in our training? Like, how has our training changed over time? Bo, do you want to start with us for that one?
Sure. Y'all, it's so good I know we don't get to see you, but thanks so much for being on here. What you do matters so much. It's such a difficult season to be able to be leading people in community, and it matters more than ever. And one of the trends that we were seeing before COVID started is just to be honest, is attendance. In terms of people attending our trainings, it was harder and harder to get them to say yes and show up. So a little context, 5 years ago when we would train new leaders, it's so funny to think this was so normal for us. We did two-hour-long trainings for leaders. We did them in the building. So you had to drive to church, drop your kid off in preschool or up street, elementary school environment, and then come to a 2-hour training and then come back the next Sunday. So here we are, our trainings are competing with Andy Stanley for their attention on a Sunday morning. And that all worked for a bunch of years. And then we just saw attendance going down and down and down. And at one point we looked through our leader rosters and about half of our leaders had ever come to new leader training. I don't know if I'm allowed to be that honest on here, Cliff, or
no,
not.
Heck yeah.
So we just started asking the question, what can we do? Because obviously that barrier to entry is too high. What are things that we can start doing to help people be able to say yes? Because we want them to be great leaders. We want them to win at leading their group and feel like they were successful, because if you feel like you were successful, you're more likely to come back and it's a better group experience for everybody else. So it's really led to some of what our conversation will be today, which is trying incremental steps to be able to make it easier for somebody to say yes to training. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of the trend several years ago that we started to see.
Lynn, what about you? What would you add to that? Maybe in how COVID has even affected this and all that we're in now?
Yeah, we were seeing, the same trend. It was kind of like, hey, you have one opportunity to come to this training. And if you can't make it, then you kind of miss it. And so, COVID actually really helped us kind of go to that next step. Like Bo said, we were making these incremental changes. We were already starting that kind of just-in-time process where we were shortening up our training, doing it a few more times over the first 6 months to really help our new leaders versus hey, you come this one time and then we don't see you again for the next 6 months. Yeah. But what COVID really did was kind of help us say, hey, can we offer more opportunities for people? Can we jump on digital Zoom options to make it a little bit easier for people to, to attend and hear the training and to really be around other leaders? Because yes, I can have a one-on-one with them after the training and just say like, hey, here's everything we covered. But we all know how much leaders love being around other leaders and just how encouraging that environment is. So we really wanted to say, like, how can we really help our leaders be able to attend and just spend time with other leaders?
That's great. That is absolutely wonderful.
Can I add something else in there, Cliff?
Yeah, please do.
Another trend that I noticed is I helped write our training curriculum, and then, we would hand it off to some other leaders who would do it. And I would show up to training, and I noticed this trend, and here, we'd helped write this content, is I would walk away then from what became a 75-minute training and think, did I help this person for their group that's this Tuesday? Mm-hmm. We taught some good principles. We taught some good, big picture ideas. Did I help them that at 6:45, when they have group members showing up at 7:00, did I help them know how to win? And again, we talked about some good things. It was a great 75 minutes together, but that started to really bother me, that I wasn't sure that we were helping them do what they really want to do. Then I had a conversation with the group leader, and I was just processing with them, and they said, hold on just a second. Here's what you pastors always want to do. You always want to pastor us. You love getting to pastor us. But when we show up to a new leader training, we just want to know how to do the thing you've asked us to do. We don't really need to be pastored right then. Help us be able to walk into our meeting on Tuesday or Monday or Wednesday or whenever it is and feel like we know what on earth we are doing. So that prompted some of the changes that we'll talk about today too.
Let's go there. Let's actually go right where you were describing too, because what do we know now, or what do we feel like leaders really, really want to know and need to know when they come to that training? Because I know, like you, we've done this for so long. We'd love to back up the dump truck and tell them everything they could possibly know. But as they start their groups, what do they really want to know? And to your point as well, what will make them feel or help them feel like they could win when those people show up at their group?
Yeah.
Lynn, would you want to chime in on that first on this one?
Yeah. So, women in particular, really like to be prepared. Some could say overly prepared. And really, it just comes from that place of feeling confident. And so we just want our leaders to feel confident that, like Bo said, it's 7:00. I've got 10 people looking at me. What do I say? What do I do? And so we really just focused on, hey, here's actually what your group looks like. Here's what time you're going to spend on the connect aspect of your group. Here's the time you're going to spend on learn and what you're talking about in your content. Here's how you're going to talk about applying that and how you can do some prayer requests. So really the real kind of tactics of leading a group and facilitating, and especially at the beginning, because that safety and trust is so important. We really talked about, like, hey, here's how you create that safe, predictable environment. And so it was just trying to think through, like, what really are those felt needs that our leaders want? And again, they're saying the same thing, I think, across, all of our campuses, which is, tell me exactly what I need to know, like tactics to facilitate.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Bo, would you want to add to that?
Yeah. So just another difference between wanting to pastor them and wanting to equip them. And, it all kind of merges together. But when I sit with a leader couple or an individual for a one-on-one, I want to hear about what God is doing, what's challenging you, what's hard right now. We want to talk and help people pay attention to what he's doing and invite them to participate. In a training, I want to give people the mechanics of a group. So that's really simply, here's what a group meeting should look like. A great group meeting, you connect, you learn, and you apply. So here's what you do. You help people connect together, help people learn something together, and then help them apply it. So again, my men's group starts at 7:30 on Monday mornings. At 7:15, I can remember, okay, what I'm trying to do today is help them connect, learn, and apply. And then our training is really centered around those three ideas. And that differs a little bit between men and women, or 22-year-olds versus 60-year-olds, but we want to help people connect, laugh together, play together, serve together. We want to help them learn, and then we want to help them do something with what they have heard. And then we've worked at making sure that we're not giving a list of essentials for group that's 13 things long, but we're really working to whittle that down to say, what are really, really the essentials for you in group?
Yeah.
And again, it sounds overly simple, isn't it? Even as I'm saying it on this call, but it's connect, learn, apply, connect, learn, apply. And so many people, if you're coming from a Sunday school model, sometimes you skip connect and sometimes you skip apply, and we spend all of our time on learn. Well, the best groups that I've been a part of actually spend more time on connect and more time on apply. And so I probably said too much there, but that's the kind of the basic mechanics of what we do, what we're trying to hand our leaders as they're leading.
Yeah, I feel like, Bo, like what you've started to move into is like, hey, based on these differences, based on what we feel like leaders need to know, this is how we adjusted our training to kind of go along with that connect, learn, and apply, and just equip them for that night. Lynn, would you have any kind of color to add to that, or anything that you feel like you guys have added as well?
Yeah, so really when we approached our training, we started looking through some of these digital options too, because kind of to Bo's point, when you think about a group, you kind of do that little bit of homework ahead of time, the learning part and the information and the reading content, you're doing that ahead of time so that you can come to group and just focus on kind of your discussion, your connection with the other members of your group and discussing and really thinking about how to apply it to life. And so we adjusted some of our training to have that front end, digital online content that's more of that information. So here's what a group is, here's what a group isn't, here's some of the group guidelines, here's some of the expectations you can have. We talk about that in kind of an online content for them to kind of process through ahead of time so that when we come together in person, we can actually talk through, we can connect with each other, but then we can talk through kind of the application. And then we can actually address kind of common group scenarios that those leaders might be facing, which again helps them feel super prepared for that first week so that when we said, hey, you've got, if you have someone who's an over talker or oversharer, what are some things you can do to help bring your, conversation back to everybody? Well, they practice that and they talk through that scenario. And then first week, if they have that, they know how to handle it.
Lynn, could you add to that? Could you break this down? So like when you're saying, hey, we gave them content, like what did that look like? Are you sending them messages? Are you sending them to a certain place? Are they reading or what? Like, what are they doing? And then where are they showing up? And how is that fitting together?
Yeah, sure. So we actually have a tool that's called Diamond Tree. And so it was a place that we could easily put some of that online content. So we just created a very simple, what you would say like an online training course would be. And it just has those pages where they can read that content. We actually also added in a couple of reflective questions at each section, just to kind of give them, again, a chance to kind of process through those things. And so they did that ahead of time. And that kind of set the foundation for then when we came together in the huddle. So when we came together as a gathering of leaders, whether we were in person, socially distanced outside, or if we were over Zoom, we got a chance to just ask if there were any questions about that initial content, but then move into hey, let's talk through what does it really mean and look like to create a safe environment, because we talked about predictability and how to create that. And so let's talk about how to be safe. How do we create an environment of acceptance? Let's process through some of those group scenarios. So we really used our in-person time to do only basically what you can do in conversation, and discussion. And we left like the information, reading comprehension piece of content, online.
That makes sense. Bo, you and I have had a chance to work together for quite a long time. So I know some of your thoughts on this too, but can you talk about, because I know you have some thoughts about how this helps different learning styles as well. And what you've seen is that, can you throw something out there on that too?
Sure. Yeah. It's we've all been in group before where you sit in group and you watch the 20 or 40 minute talk and it wasn't a great use of your time because you were all together and you had to get a babysitter to show up to that group. And B, what happened is all the people like me had plenty of opinions about it, but my brilliant introverted wife didn't have much to say because she needed time to be able to process it. So what we've seen by putting content online or sending it to them in an email in advance is it helps everybody be able to show up to that conversation ready to engage and participate. And here's the beauty of it is, I'm sure we'll get into more of the nuts and bolts here. You could record a video. You could spend $3,000 to get a super high quality video. You could also put some of that training just in a PDF and say, read this in advance. And you're getting at different ways that people can learn, because of course you don't want to just sit there and watch the video together. You want to get together and, like Lynn's saying, talk about it. Okay, but what about the introverts? What about the people who don't show up on time? I had this difficult person in my group before. And now you're really humming. Now you're having the real honest conversation. And here's the magic there, Cliff, is I know that when I'm training my leaders, I'm modeling for them what I want them to do when they're leading their group. And if I'm talking the whole time, that's a really, really bad role model. I don't want group leaders who talk the whole time. I want leaders who ask questions and get people sharing what's real and what's going on and doing reflective listening and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Thanks. And I was a part of that too. I know, because like when you were describing those, we used to have 2-hour trainings. I was one of those people that would get up there and talk for so long, and it just isn't the greatest model, but it took something like this to force us out of it. And so,
and the great gift is, another thing about learning styles is you can only learn so much. So when we were doing these lengthy trainings, I mean, how much can I expect somebody to really walk away? But the beauty of Zoom is I'll end this meeting and go right into another meeting. I could set up 10 Zoom calls this week with groups of 3 leaders and have 10 phone conversations. And then 6 weeks later, set up another round of them. And we can break what was that big, long training up into what do they need to know to get started? What do they need to go 6 weeks in? What can I do to help them now 12 weeks in? And now we're being so much more helpful because we can think about what problems are they facing along the way in their group.
Yeah. Now you've both kind of talked about this, but Lynn, can you help comment on this? How much material are we actually giving people to consume before? Because there's some challenge there too. I know sometimes, like, I would love to give them all of this stuff to take in. So like on your side, how long is this pre-work actually taking folks before they would come to an online or an in-person huddle?
Yeah. So, I think we all kind of gravitate a little bit towards like, oh, but this is really important. We should tell them this. And oh, this is really important too. And gosh, but they need to know this. And so we worked really hard to try to condense it down. So it really takes about 20 minutes. So they can log on, they can do it all in one sitting. They can do it over a couple of different sittings, but it's basically just 20 minutes ahead of time for them to get ready. And then, but what we also did with our huddle is, like Bo said, we used to do 2-hour huddles or an hour and a half huddle. And what we did was we shortened our huddle to an hour. So, the amount of time that they're spending kind of learning to be a new leader is the same, but it's broken up in a way that, to Bo's point too, it's just easier for them to actually retain what it is that they need to know when they first launch their group.
Great. That's fabulous. That is fabulous. So how did it go? What did you guys find out through this? What were maybe some of the successes and some of the things, and please don't be shy in sharing some of the things that we found out of, like, hey, let's not do that again. Bo, can you start there? And then we'll have Lynn add to that as well.
Yeah. First things first, when you have to record a video. So just real simply, they did Diamond Tree. We've not done that. We just recorded 3 5-minute videos and we put them on a website. It can be as simple as this. And the beauty of Zoom is you can hit that record button and you can just talk to your screen or talk into a voice note or whatever you would do. It really forces you to condense your training. It really forces you to say, what do I have to tell them? That's how we came up with connect, learn, apply. So there's a 5-minute video about connect, 5 minutes about learn, 5 minutes about apply. And I think that part goes really well because it's something that they can go back and access anytime. And it elevates our conversation to my point earlier when we're then in the room. And now instead of having 2 Sundays a year where I can do training, I can really do training with leaders anytime during the week. I mean, we've trained leaders over lunch. We train them over Zoom in the evenings. We can catch up with them anytime. Here's another little added bonus for us is, you said earlier, leaders love interacting with other leaders. It's been a great way to engage some of our more seasoned leaders, to invite them to participate in these phone calls because it helps them get reoriented to the vision. And then what we do is we do that phone call or that Zoom call right before you start leading your group. And then 6 weeks in, we do another one all about scenarios. So we take the most difficult things that happen in group or the most common difficult things that happen in group. And seasoned leaders love showing up to that because no matter how many times you've been leading a group, I've been leading a men's group since 2001, different men's groups. it's still hard to deal with people who don't show up on time. Like, it's still hard to know what to deal with the guy who won't open up. So you always learn something, and seasoned leaders show up and they then feel like they're contributing and they realize they have stuff that they can add value to. What I think is not perhaps going as well is it's more difficult the way that we've done it to know if people actually watched the videos, because I know if they were in the room and watching my training, but I'm okay with that. I feel like I know if they showed up to the Zoom call and I know if they were here or not, and then I know how to track them down. And then, the other thing that's maybe not going as well is you do have to sacrifice some things that could be helpful to people. I mean, we're talking about backing the dump truck up. Some of that stuff was really helpful, and we've had to find other ways to be able to get that information into people's hands. For example, I think icebreaker questions are a really big deal, and what questions we equip people to ask in their groups. Well, we just don't have time to talk about that in our new training, which means we had to find other ways to be able to get great icebreaker questions in their hands.
It makes a lot of sense.
Lynn, how about for you? What do you feel like has worked and not worked?
Yeah.
And Lynn, specifically, I know you train in a little bit different way. So while Bo wasn't able to track, I think you are able to track. So if you can add that into whatever other benefits you've seen, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So using Diamond Tree, it does allow us to look and view where people are and how completed they are in the training. So you can see literally a list of all your leaders, and if they're 100% complete, 75% complete. And again, I think I mentioned that we added in some of these kind of processing questions. We can actually drill down and see their responses. So one of the questions that we asked was like, are you nervous or excited about starting your new group? So I can look at the responses of my new leaders. And then if someone's like, I'm super nervous, I can follow up with them one-on-one. So there were some things about that part that was really helpful. One of the other things that we did differently because of COVID was we offered a few more options. So kind of like Bo said, it was like, oh, we can train over lunch, we can train at night over Zoom. And so offering a few more options for those huddles and just using our time to do that was super helpful, because that really allowed us to up our attendance. Like, people had more options to choose from. So if they were out one Sunday, they could attend a different one, and it worked really well.
That's great. That's great. So I know there's been a number of questions in the chat. Diamond Tree is just a product that we use. We're not necessarily related to Diamond Tree in any sort of way, but there's a lot of different learning management systems that can do the same things. I've seen others mentioned in the chat as well. That just happens to be a tool that's being used at some of our campuses to help. So I hope that might help as we're putting context around this as well. We did have a question come in that I'd love to throw out to you guys to see what you think. It was, what do group leaders need to know and be experiencing now so they can thrive in their walk with Jesus, so their groups can be life-giving in this next season? That came from Chris in California. But Bo, can you add to that? And then Lynn, I'd love to get your comments as well.
So they're asking, what can we do to make sure that group is life-giving for the leader also?
Well, what do group leaders need to know now so they can feel like they're thriving in their walk with Jesus?
Wow, it's really good.
So that their groups can do the same.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, Cliff, is that the pressure is off. There's that terrific verse where Paul says, listen, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God is the one making it grow. For group leaders, there is so much right now that you're having to process and deal with. We're having to wrestle with COVID, with meetings on Zoom, with people who are losing their jobs, family members who are sick. Plus, you're wanting to make sure if people got through all the content and what are we going to study next? And I think the pressure is off. Yeah. The Holy Spirit, God is the one who is making these people grow. So you just showing up and creating an environment where people can be known, where everywhere else in the world they're being fragmented, they're being, pitted against each other, where every message that you hear politically, we're in Georgia, we just went through the Senate runoff. Everything is all about, fighting against the other side. You're creating a space where people have the opportunity to be known. If you didn't get through all of your questions about Romans 12, it's okay. If not everybody showed up this week because they had a kid who was dealing with homeschool, Zoom, whatever stuff, that is okay. You're creating a place where people can be known, can be seen, where they're paying attention to what God is doing. I feel like that is the most important message that we can send. And part of where that's personally challenging for me is that for some of our leaders, we're about to launch groups here at the end of January. For some of our leaders, the best thing that they could do is take a season off from leading group and be in a group. And that's really, really hard for us because we need them to lead because we're short on leaders. Leader recruitment has been difficult. But maybe what they need right now is a season to just belong and be in a group.
Yeah, that's great. Lynn, would you have anything to add? Any advice you're giving leaders on helping them in that way too?
Yeah. So, just similar, we kind of start all the way back at kind of that interview process, when they first apply for leadership, of just to communicate just how their most important thing that they bring to leading is their personal growing relationship with Christ. So, again, leaning into the Spirit, being connected to the vine, all of that is really what's just going to help you lead. And then to remember that, it's the Holy Spirit that grows people and can fix people. It's not your job. You're not responsible for that. One of the things that we just did that we helped communicate with some of our leaders because they were expressing some frustration during the fall was with people not showing up to group, right? They say they're going to come and at the last minute they don't show up and now there's only 2 of us or 3 of us. And, and it really just disheartens our leaders. It gets frustrating for them. And so we really just said, hey, this is the Holy Spirit's group and you minister to whoever shows up. That's who the Holy Spirit brought today. That's who God brought. That's who you minister to. You are doing a good work and you're working for the kingdom and you're growing in your relationship with Christ. You're helping them grow. And that was really freeing for a lot of our leaders to feel like, oh, I don't have to worry about that or have that burden on me or that responsibility on me. I can really, just focus on who comes and let us have a great experience getting to know more about God and learning more about ourselves in the process.
Oh, that's wonderful, Lynn. Thank you.
There are so many things oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Add to it, Bo.
Oh, just another thought or two about that. There's so many people who have decision fatigue in the world of COVID. And I think one way that we help our leaders, we don't always do this. In fact, we've kind of rarely done this, is to say, you know what, this spring, do this study. Just decide it for them in advance. Tell them, here's 4 great icebreaker questions that can win. Because again, going back to that picture, okay, it's 6:30, group starts at 7. If I have one thing that only that leader can do, that leader is the only person who can attend to their own relationship with Jesus and who can pay attention to the group members. I can pick the study for them. I can write the icebreaker questions for them. I can't be in the room, whether it's a virtual room or in-person room, paying attention to what God is doing. So what we've been trying to do is help kind of take some of the burden off of leaders' shoulders in this season.
That's great. I love that. So do for them what you can and allow them to concentrate on the things that only they can do during that time. That makes a ton of sense. Now, you both mentioned this. We're about to start a roundup of training our leaders as well and preparing them for those groups that they're going to start here at the end of this month or the beginning of February. If you guys were to get real tactical, what are the principles or what are the specific things that you're intending to focus on in that now? Lynn, would you go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. So again, with our online content up front, we're really addressing, again, our win for our group is that leaders create a safe, predictable environment for people to pursue authentic community and spiritual growth. So we're focusing on safe and predictable environment. So up front, our online content that they're reviewing ahead of time talks a lot about predictability. So, what are some of the group ground rules? How do you create a predictable environment? You start on time, you end on time, you communicate ahead of time, all those kind of tactical things of what does it look like to create predictability up front. And then in our huddles, we talk about kind of the safety, right? How do you instill trust? What do you do and how do you respond to moments of vulnerability? How are you as a leader being appropriately vulnerable at the beginning and recognizing the pace of those relationships as they build over time? So again, to Bo's point, we created, kind of a plan for them, the icebreaker questions, some studies, all of that up front. And then our training really is, hey, how do you stay attuned to the environment that you're creating? because that is really what your unique role is.
That makes sense. Hey, Bo, do you have any nuances you would add to that for what you're doing at Buckhead?
I mean, it's really, really good. And, you all know this, and but it's so easy to want to be novel instead of just to be predictable and keep saying the same thing over and over and over. And, the 48th time that I've done a leader training, I'm tired of talking about these 4 leader essentials, but it's so important for leaders to hear them over and over. So we talk about 4 essentials for leadership, 4 things that make a great group. Maybe there's 8, maybe there's 12, but 4 is easier for me to remember. First, we've talked about already, which is stay connected, that you staying connected to your Heavenly Father. Every group member staying connected to their Heavenly Father makes for a better group. The second is to cultivate relationships, that we're here not just to get this content through us, but to be known, to see each other. Jesus said that the world would know that we're his disciples, not because we memorized Romans, but because of the way we apply Romans, the way that we love each other. The third is we promote participation. That is, groups share the load. Great groups don't just look to one leader to do everything, but they look for other ways to engage people. And the fourth is to provide care. The simple things of, if somebody has a baby, you go ahead and set up that meal train for them, or you rake the leaves in their yard, or you find ways to just care, to follow up about prayer requests. So when I talked about connect, learn, apply, that's what that middle category is all about those 4 things, which are, again, stay connected, promote participation, cultivate relationships, and provide care.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Did I get them right, Cliff? I hope I got them right.
I think you did. I wanted to interject there and actually almost go, do you know him, Bo? Can you get him for us? Because we've all been in that situation, right? Where we're like, hey, the leader essentials are, so that was.
And if we can't remember them, how on earth is a leader ever going to remember them? Yes.
Yep. That's fabulous. So how do you know if this is working? What kind of feedback have you received? How do you know if this is working? If this is helping group leaders really start well and feel like they're winning? Lynn, can you start for us?
Yeah. So, leaders are pretty good at times of providing feedback. And so, of course, from our trainings, our leaders usually leave going, thank you so much. This was so helpful. But where we really see the fruit of that is whether these groups stay together. So when we launched in the fall, we launched what we called our 3-month groups, which is meaning they're just committing to 3 months. And that was, kind of counter to what our typical model was of 12 to 24 months. But we felt like in a pandemic, we couldn't imagine committing to something for 12 months when we didn't know what we were doing next week. So, we created these 3-month groups. We said, hey, you're only committing to 3 months. And so a win for us to say like, hey, this really is working is the fact that our leaders at the end of that 3 months want to continue. Their group members are wanting to continue on past the 3 months. And so for North Point, we had a little over between, I think like 87% or some of our groups that actually continued on after those initial 3 months. And so we feel like that means the leader is actually doing a great job at creating a good group experience, and that the leader is feeling confident and positive about their experience leading. And so those 2 things are happening. And we feel like, a change in the training a little bit was super helpful for that.
That's fabulous. Bo, any other things you'd comment on that help us know that if we're doing a good job with this or not?
Those are really, really intimidating numbers, Lynn, that you had that many people coming back. That's amazing. One other note, I've seen some comments in the chat about coaches. We use coaches, and the way that we use them, as I've said before, they show up to training. They'll show up when we do, fire pits or gatherings with leaders. And then when you're a first-time leader, you can sign up to be coached by one of these experienced leaders, and they'll meet with you to do some of the things y'all have talked about in the chat, provide care, check in, kind of pastor, lead, mentor them. I really trust those coaches because, for starters, new leaders tend to like us. They tend to, they're new to the church. They're excited to be here. It's harder to get the honesty from them. Somebody's been around our church for a little while. They don't have any problem being honest about how things are going. And they will come back and tell us, hey, I've been coaching these young leaders. They really need help talking about this, or there's such good feedback to us about the real tone and posture of how our leaders are doing.
That is fabulous. Well, hey, it looks also like this is great. I'm watching the chat here, and all of the questions are being answered by our moderators, which is wonderful. So I'm hoping that's helpful as well. And thank you. I mean, a lot of you guys are jumping in. You're giving each other even your contact information to connect with one another. So we're super glad that looks like it's been helpful for you. But just wanted to say thank you again for everyone that has joined today. And we hope that this has helped you at least give you some new ideas, maybe some things that you can try to equip your leaders better. But then also, like I said before, please improve on this. We've got a long way to go. We certainly don't think that we've solved this in any way, stretch, or form. But in the coming days, we'll also be sending you an email. So be looking out for that. We're going to include a recording of this webinar in case you want to go back and you want to look at things. And we'll also send you some links to some resources that we hope will be helpful. Included in that, there'll also be a link to get a hold of us if we can help you in any way with your groups as well. So Bo, thank you for being here. Lynn, thank you a ton for what you added and your expertise in this area as well. And to everybody that joined, thank you so much. And we hope this has been helpful. We hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.